All right, welcome to another episode of the Outsider Podcast, folks. I am your host, Drew Landry, and it has been a long time coming. It's so good to be back here with you. It's been a minute since we have visited, since you have heard from me through the podcast airwaves, and I've been busy with the daily writing of the newsletter and giving out free content and all the writing and teaching and all those things that go along with it. Of course, you may remember that I would do a little bit of writing, and then I'd do a podcast, and do a little bit of writing, do a podcast, and I just kind of got away from the talking and doing the podcast and focused more on the writing. Well, I'm going to try to get back to what it used to be, where I would talk and write and all that, but just that a lot of this deals with a lot of time, and as you can probably imagine, time is of the essence, and so there's been a lot of stuff taking place over the last several months. I've been writing a lot about it in the newsletter, and folks, just want to take just a small time out to promote to you the deal that I have going on for you over at Substack with the Outsider newsletter. You get 25% off a year subscription to the Outsider. Folks, that's a little more, or that's a little less than $40 a year for a year subscription. That goes on the entire month of December. So that will go until January 2nd of 2026. So you have a full month, or a little less than a month, to really, whenever you are listening to this episode, to go to the Outsider Podcast, go to the Outsider newsletter on Substack, and do yourself a favor and get yourself subscribed as a paid subscriber. Upgrade your free subscription to a paid subscription, and then you get all the daily takes, all the daily things from Monday through Friday on what's going on in the U.S. and in the world and in Texas, and you get my takes on them. It's just a handful of things. It's not like some 15, 20-minute reading assignment. It's maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. And it's delivered to you in the morning, and it right to your email inbox, to your Substack app on your phone, and you get to read it right there. My thoughts, my own creations, not AI written, not anything like that. And you get them every Monday through Friday. There might be some breaks ever so often, but I'll announce that. The free posts that are given out, you get first access to those. So just remind yourself that when there's a free post given, it's already been seen by the paid subscribers. Folks, this is a deal. This is not just a deal. This is a steal. I mean, usually it's $50 a year to subscribe, and that's even a deal in and of itself. You get 25% off that particular deal, and that's going on the entire month up until January 2nd of 2026. Wanted to give a small plug for that before I get into some talking points with you. And with that in mind, I wanted to start off by talking about this whole gerrymander, or as I called it in my piece with the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, the Trumpmander. I mean, it's really his whole thing anyway, and he hasn't shied away from it. And I mean, there is no like, oh, I don't want you to do this. No, he's been very active with this because, we can say a lot about the president, and there's a lot to be said about the president. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a battling allergies here as we get into the winter season, so my nose runs a little bit. It's like a politician; it's running from my face. But I wanted to just pick up on this whole talk of a mid-decade redistricting effort that the president really has been at the forefront. He's asked Texas to do this. Texas did it. It really, there were a lot of reports that Governor Abbott wasn't really excited about doing it, and then the president called him, and then he suddenly became very excited to do this. So that took care of that. And then California countered back to say, oh no, if you do it, we're going to do it. And then you had Missouri get involved in this. And then there's been some talks of Virginia getting involved in this. And so you're having these states, these Republican and Democratic states, other pundits like to say the red and the blue states are all trying to, one up one another over this congressional redistricting fight. And now you have the Hoosier state. All right, that's where I grew up. That's where I was born. I was born in Indiana. I have my side of the family. They're all there. Well, 95% of them are there. So this isn't like I don't have any sort of connection to this state. This has been an interesting matter. I mean, the state's changed over the last 20 years. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about that. But where that congressional representation stands right now is that there are 9 House seats. Okay, Indiana has 11 electoral votes. Electoral votes are decided by your House of Representatives plus your 2 senators. So Indiana has 9 members in the House of Representatives. 7 of those 9 go to the Republicans. Only 2 are Democratic. And the 2 Democratic seats are currently in the Indianapolis area and in the northwestern portion of the states called the region, your Chicagoland region. And that's been those are really the only 2 Democratic seats. Now, where I grew up was in south central, what's called the Wabash Valley, that hovers around the Indiana-Illinois border, from around a little around Terre Haute down to that Wabash Valley goes to around Vincennes, which is Knox County. And so that was known, it had Vigo and portions of Clay County and Sullivan County and Jasonville, which is in Greene County. That's where I grew up. And we were in what was called the 8th Congressional District, all right? It was known as the Bloody 8th. You can go back to 1982 for a reference to that between Frank McCluskey and Rick McIntyre in their very close congressional election. What happened is now that district used to be a toss-up. It's no longer a toss-up. It's a pretty solid Republican district, as is with other districts throughout the state of Indiana. Well, friends, 7-2 is a pretty good majority, but 7-2 is not good enough for the president. 7-2 is not good enough for the president and his agenda. And you may say, well, why do I keep saying that? Why do I keep saying that it's not good for his agenda? Why am I bringing this up? Well, look, all this mid-decade redistricting effort is quite clear. There's nothing hidden about this. This is clearly his point to try to offset the ongoing effects of midterm elections. Look, there's been political science since going back to the 1930s, if not even further than that, to suggest that the party of the president does not typically do well in midterm elections, especially for the House of Representatives. Usually the opposite party of the president does better in midterm elections. All right, we can go, from 1938 to 1998, the party of the president lost seats in the House of Representatives. And the reason I say 1938 to 1998, 38, FDR was president, FDR was a Democrat, Democrats gained seats in the House. Okay? Maybe that was 36. No, it was 38. 1998, Bill Clinton, a Democrat, president, 98's a midterm. Let's remember, that was the year of scandal. And Democrats gained seats in the House of Representatives. It was wild. The next time that happened was the very next midterm in 2002 with George W. Bush and the Republicans gaining seats in the House of Representatives. So that hasn't happened since. And in Trump's last midterm in 2018, they lost over 40 seats in the House. The Republicans lost over 40 seats in the House in 2018, giving the Democrats power over the House the first time in about 10 years. So the president doesn't want that again. Donald Trump does not want the Democrats to have any sort of power inside of Congress. And it's pretty tough for the Democrats to get back in the Senate, just the way that the map looks. It doesn't really look like that they will regain the Senate. But they can possibly gain a seat or two. But the House, with the very slim majority that the Republicans have, and with Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving at the beginning of January of 2026, and with this special election that's taking place on December the 2nd, now understand that this is being recorded before then. So recording Drew doesn't know the results of that special election in Tennessee, where the polling suggests it'll be kind of close, and polling is what it is. That's the only type of data that we can really go with. But the only real poll that matters is election day. It's a more on the Republican side seat is the Tennessee 7th than it is on the Democratic side, but turnout matters, and so even if the Democrats don't win that seat, if they come close, people are all saying, "Oh, that's bad news for the president." I wouldn't buy too much stock into that right now because that's 11 months away. But it is good to say at that moment it may not be good for the president. But the president does not want to lose another midterm. He doesn't want his party to do bad in the midterm elections. So how do you prevent that from happening? You have states, which is their job, according to the Constitution, to adopt new maps, to redistrict. Okay, that's the states' job. And so it's up to them now to adopt this whole redistricting matter. And so he's wanting states to gerrymander better. All right, I actually got into an interesting conversation with a retired colleague of mine over my Trumpmander article that I put in the newsletter and then was published by the AJ, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. That's all that this is about. This is not about the attempt to try to take your message into the public square and let it be that. It's to coerce. We're going to force the maps to look different so that my party can do better, according to the president. All right. So he doesn't want to change his message. And why do I say that? Well, just look at the polling averages done by the more right-leaning data collector of Real Clear Politics. Real Clear Politics is has the president's average approval right now when I'm recording this on December the 1st of 2025. His average approval is 42.6%. His average disapproval is 55.3%. Okay? That means there's about 3% who can't make up their minds. That's not good. Okay? That's not the lowest his approval has ever been, but it's not the best. And that's where he is disapproving is really the highest that he's ever been. Okay? And it doesn't look like that this is really going to get any better. Now, that remains to be seen. You can't really say that with a whole deal of confidence because the economy can turn around. All right, maybe the whole tariffs and all these things proves to be very helpful to the president come 2026. I mean, he's wanting, that was the big thing about this whole one big beautiful bill tax thing, is that he wants people to feel this big tax cut. And how you going to do that? You make their tax refund checks larger. So let's do that. And then he talked about giving that reimbursement of tariffs of $2,000, give that to them. And then you get $2,000 for health care. I mean, the ongoing criticism from the right about those on the left is that they just want all these giveaway programs. And there's a kernel of truth in that. But this is a giveaway program. I mean, come on. You kidding me? Just take the money. Just take the money. Just make sure you know whose name is on the check and that you vote for me. And that you vote for the Republicans again. That's what this is about. So if you give them the money, they have a larger tax refund check, and then the maps are in your favor, then you won't really lose any seats come the election. And if the numbers go up, if his approval ratings go up, which they easily could, then he's going into the midterms looking a whole lot better than what he is right this very moment. And folks, that's the thing about public opinion. It's like the wind. It can change direction at any time. The president gets a few wins from this Congress, which his party's in charge of. Okay. And, I just want to point out something here. They can give him any sort of victory that they want. Well, Drew, there's the 60-vote rule in the Senate. Yeah, there's the filibuster in the Senate. The president wants it gone. The president's secretary of Treasury wants it gone. There's other people inside the executive branch who want that thing gone. All right? The president has wanted the filibuster gone for some time. And how does the filibuster keep sticking around? Because the majority lets it stick around. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has been very adamant that he doesn't want to mess with the filibuster. But we'll see how much more pressure this is put on him to actually change that. So when you have the ability to possibly get wins from Congress to improve your approval ratings that can possibly improve your ability to keep Congress in the midterm, you try to take that. And that's for the president. That's what all this is about. I finally made full circle here, that this is about the president being able to keep Republicans in power for the House of Representatives in the U.S. Senate. So this whole thing about redistricting throughout the states has been a very interesting tale, and Indiana has been a state that is usually kind of faltered to whatever the Republicans want to do. Governor Mike Braun up there is a Trump acolyte. He's pretty much loves what the president does, and the president loves him. And he, President wanted Governor Braun to call a special session. He said, fine, he will. So as of this recording, the Indiana General Assembly, that's what it's called up there, is having a special session to deal with redistricting, to do the Trumpmander. The problem with this has not been the Indiana House. The votes are there for the gerrymander, for the Trumpmander in the House. The problem has been the Senate. And, folks, there's a supermajority for the Republicans in the Indiana Senate. There's 50 members in the Indiana Senate. 50 members. So that means, you got to have at least 26 votes there. Of the 50, 40 of them are Republicans. They have an 80% majority in Indiana General Assembly's upper chamber. They have 40 out of 10. 40 out of 50, I'm sorry. So that means 10 seats go to the Democrats. Well, what we currently have right now is the number of votes that keep saying no to the Trumpmander keep climbing in the Indiana Senate. They keep climbing. A source that I follow on the LinkedIn, the site is indypolitics.org. The person who runs that is Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Wrote in his newest column that there's one more, that the no votes on the Republicans have spiked up to 10. And the one who did it was Senator Mike Bohesic from Michigan Shores. And he voted no because the president called somebody a derogatory name for people who have mental illnesses and mental incapabilities. He said, the president wants me to do that. I'm not doing it. So now you have a grand total. You have all the Democrats in the Texas Senate. There's 10 of them saying no. Now you have 10 Republicans who say no. So currently you have 30 yays, apparently, and 20 nays. There needs to be 6 more Republican senators to say no. And it looks like that is a possibility. Here's a little bit of analysis here. With Bohasik's announcement, 10 Senate Republicans are now on record opposing the plan. The total number is 20. The Indiana Senate has 50 members. 26 are required to defeat the redistricting bill. The growing list of Republican opponents presents a significant challenge as the deliberations continue. So it looks like that the Indiana Senate is not entirely on board with this, and the president's plan could possibly falter, and that will just anger him. I mean, he'll get mad. He'll post stuff on his little page of where like maybe 20 people are on. It's and it gets the media's attention because they love the guy. It's just it doesn't seem like this is catching steam. Let alone the fact that Kansas has already said that they're not going to do it either. So all this in the attempt for the Republicans to hold the House. That's all that this is about. So the president can keep his agenda going. Look, politics is politics. I get it. The president wants to keep power for the rest of his time in office. Totally understand that. But I want to be clear that's what this is about. This isn't about somebody going, "Oh yeah, we should. Oh, what a bright idea!" This is, this isn't like someone going, "Oh, eureka! I got a new idea." No, this is about power. It's about power, folks. And I wanted that to be as clear as possible. Okay. So it looks like the point of that is this. Just so we can just make this very clear, and I'm going to move on to another topic after this. It looks like that the Trumpmander is in limbo in Indiana. Of course, that could change at any time. That needs to be said. And all of this is for the president and the Republicans to maintain their slim majority in the House of Representatives after the midterm. Another thing I wanted to point out here. This came from the Boston Globe. This is a columnist, Joan Vinocci, who wrote that the president's ICE attempts actually caught his press secretary Caroline Leavitt's family. I don't know if you all caught this, but Caroline Leavitt is now in the mix of a lot of the ICE issues, and it pertains to someone who is in her family. And here's how this works out: is that the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt appears to be doing, in this case, involving Bruna Ferreira. There we go. A Massachusetts woman who was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents on her way to pick up her son in New Hampshire, and was detained some 1,600 miles away at an ICE facility in Louisiana. A question that Vinocci emailed to the White House press office about the relationship between Caroline Leavitt and Ferreira drew this reply from a source familiar with the information, quote unquote. This individual is the mother of Caroline's nephew, and they apparently have not spoken in years. The child has lived full-time in New Hampshire with his father since he was born. He's never resided with his mother. However, according to Todd Pomerleau, who is Ferreira's lawyer, the statement that Leavitt and Ferreira have not spoken in years is indeed false. In an interview, Pomerleau Pomerleau said Ferreira has been, quote-unquote, around them being the Levitt family, for years and is proud of Caroline. He's also said Ferreira sees her son every week and is very involved in his life. Said Ferreira recently attended a sporting event at her son's school with some Levitt family members. So, is Caroline Levitt telling the truth here? Is she trying to distance herself? Who's going to be the sense of loyalty here? Is it family or the president? I don't know. I mean, when you find all this stuff out, you have to process all of the facts, and the Boston Globe columnist does mention some things here. It says Ferreira was arrested on November the 12th in Revere, where she lives, and according to the Department of Homeland Security, Ferreira is a criminal illegal alien from Brazil who entered the U.S. on a B-2 tourist visa that required her to depart the country by June 6, 1999, when, as her lawyer points out, she would have been a young child. Right. Her lawyer said that she initially received temporary protection under DACA, okay, and has been seeking a permanent form of legal status through a green card. Levitt family members were aware of that, according to Ferreira's lawyer. Okay. So, what's Caroline Levitt's response to all this? Well, I don't really know her all that much. We don't really talk that much. Turns out that they really are. All this stuff hits home when it gets personal. All right. There's a lot of polling to suggest yes, people are typically in favor of these deportations if they are criminals, if they are the bad guys. When they are someone who may not be here legally, but does do all the good things for the community, the public doesn't like the fact when they just suddenly get upheaved. Okay, there's been a lot of reports of this throughout a lot of media. It's not just the left wing. Like, you see things from the Christian Science Monitor. You see things from even Fox will even report these sorts of things. So it's not exactly done by your what is often dubbed the left-wing media. But when it's done, we have to remember that there are family members involved in this, and now with the president's own staff involved in this, it seems as if Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, is going to choose to be distant than other things. One other thing I wanted to mention here is when we talk about Texas politics, the filing deadline is coming up, and depends on who and when you're actually hearing this. There's been a lot of seats that are going to be filled, a lot of seats that are going to be tried, a lot of seats that will go uncontested and contested, and so on and so on. So where I am based is in West Texas, in the Lubbock area, and in this area there are two House districts. There's House District 83 that belongs to House Speaker Dustin Burrows, and there's House District 84 that belongs to lawmaking sophomore Carl Tepper. Both are going to have Democrats running against them. And even State Senator Perry's going to have a Democrat running against him. So it seems as if Democrats are going to have an interesting slate of candidates. This is going to be the first time a Democrat's going to run for state senate since 2015. All right. So it'll be Charles Perry's first competitive election, quote-unquote competitive election, in about 10 years. Okay. Now, I have to say that, I actually thought that 2020, this past session, would be Senator Perry's last session. I mean, he's getting up in age, and you have to wonder how much more he wants to do this. But with the recent developments with THC and his strong stance on that, against it, by the way, makes him want to run again. Like, he wants to see this. He wants to see that thing banned. He's passionate about it. Good for him. Personally, I wish he was more passionate about public education than he was about banning THC, or as much as he is about banning THC. Of course, we cannot forget the other big races that are going on here with the U.S. Senate races. Okay, you have the Democratic primary that may or may not have Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Then you have the Republican primary that three main candidates are involved in that. Sitting Senator John Cornyn running for re-election, Kim Paxton, Attorney General, and then Congressman Wesley Hunt. Look, I'm just going to say this. You've heard me say this before. If you've seen me on the air, if you see me say this either in person, on TV, on the radio, it's this. No Democrat can beat John Cornyn. I don't care who it is. Okay? Maybe O'Rourke in 2020. Maybe. But not the case here in 2026. So I just want to make that very, very clear. That particular ship is just not going to happen for the Democrats if Cornyn wins the Republican nominee, if he wins that nomination. Republicans, though, are going to be like Molly Hatchet. If they're going to nominate Kim Paxton, folks, they are flirting with disaster. And if you are listening to this and you are a Republican, you should know that Democrats want Kim Paxton. They don't want to face John Cornyn. They'll even take Wesley Hunt. They want anyone but John Cornyn to be your party's nominee. Now, let's also face a fact here, and again, I've said this before, and you're going to hear it several more times. Democrats haven't won anything statewide in over 30 years. So you could say, well, be careful what you wish for. In case, if they do get Kim Paxton, who's never lost a statewide race, he's never lost a race, no matter how much baggage and how much stuff, how many self-inflicted wounds he causes, because he is nothing more than a walking problem. Okay, Kim Paxton has a virility problem. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know. He just needs to take cold showers from now on. But I guess he's thinking that this is that campaigning and winning elections is not difficult enough for him. Maybe he needs to add some more difficulty. Let me get divorced. Let's see how difficult that is. Do I get more points for range of difficulty? Goodness gracious. But the Democrats want Kim Paxton. They don't want John Cornyn. And the Republicans need to know that. You need to know that. And the guy that they don't want to face is the guy who can secure you victory for another 6 years. Kim Paxton, I don't know, can really do that. But on the Democratic side, there was a lot of talk about the Castro brothers. Okay? And Julian and Joaquin. I am very frustrated with the Castro brothers, because apparently there was going to be some big deal, and they talked about this over at Triv Fest last month, about how there was going to be this big grand ticket like the Democrats had in 2002. It was called the Dream Team. You're going to have this long slate of candidates, and they were going to take things over, and all this sort of thing. Well, we know what happened to that. And Rick Perry had a really great line for that. The Dream Team's going to wake up to is going to have a rude awakening. It's a really good, touche. And so that's what they were aiming for. Somebody could run for somebody could run for Senate, somebody run for governor, somebody run for lieutenant governor, somebody run for attorney general. And Castro says, "Hey guys, I'll run. Whatever you want to do, I'll run for this if y'all can do that." And they couldn't agree, so he said, "I'm out." Weak sauce, Castro. Weak sauce, sir. Look, Abbott. The governor's going to run for a fourth term, and I like State Representative Hinojosa. I like Andrew White. I do. I think they are nice people. and they have pretty good political minds. But I'm telling you this: the Castros one of them needed to run for governor. This was their opportunity to actually lead instead of leading from behind. But they looked at that race. They said, that's going to be too tough for me. I don't want to do it. They looked for a way out. And every Democrat who listens to this, every left of center person who listens to this needs to stop leaning on the Castros. Stop even bringing them up into conversation. All right? Because the moment you say, "Hey, you should run for that," they don't want to. They're part of a group that cares more about political wins and losses than they do about public service. It's the same thing about Pete Buttigieg. All right? Pete Buttigieg, I don't know if you knew this, Pete Buttigieg ran for state treasurer in Indiana in 2010. He lost to Richard Murdoch pretty badly. And remember, 2010 was a bad year for Democrats, where they lost like over 60 seats in the House. And Buttigieg, used that name recognition. He ran for mayor of South Bend, and that's how he became Mayor Pete. And and he realized that he can't win statewide in Indiana. So he just comes to Austin and says he's going to run for president of all things. And that was just to simply boost his name recognition. And then he becomes transportation secretary. And now he moves to Michigan, which is friendlier to Democrats than what Indiana is, to be honest. He saw difficulty and he tucked tail and ran. No. So he said, "No, I don't want to run for governor. I'm out. I'm not going to do that." So you got all these people who may want to run for president. No. If you're left of center and you're listening to this and you think of the Castros as doing anything or Pete Buttigieg as doing anything, no. Mark them out. Pete Buttigieg is going around right now doing the whole dog and pony show. He's appearing on podcasts. He's coming on looking as if he's some cool-looking dude where he's not wearing a tie, and he's got the whole button-down shirt, and he, being all folksy and being, "Oh, hey, hoo." Get rid of that. No. Pete Buttigieg didn't go to a public school. Didn't go to any Indiana school. He went to Harvard and he went to Oxford. Okay? So, and then he becomes mayor, and then he almost gets impeached for a crazy scandal dealing with the sheriff. He's just small time. He's a big guy who can't quite wear the big shoes. He thinks he's a big guy. He's a little guy who can't wear the big shoes. There, I got it right. So anyway, same thing goes for the Castros. Can't trust them. They only look out for themselves. So if there's any sort of difficulty, if they think, "Oh man, I don't know if I can actually win this race," and then they suddenly go, "Oh, I don't want to do it. I'm out." And that was the whole thing about this Senate race. That's the whole thing about this governor's race, the lieutenant governor, where you actually could have had a good slate of candidates and had solid competition, or at least would have brought out competition. But instead, they blamed it on the whole, "Well, we couldn't agree." What a bunch of crap. Bunch of crap. To quote Seinfeld, shove your stars in a sack. Okay. Didn't mean to get so angry there, but one uplifting aspect that's been happening here is we're coming on the heels of the Thanksgiving holiday, and I hope you all were able to enjoy that, or whenever you're listening to this, I hope you are listening to it, and I hope you enjoyed your holiday. But I wanted to mention to you that it's a good time to be around here. I'm happy to bring back this podcast. I'm going to have more structure to it. One of my big goals for the next year is to do more with the Outsider newsletter, with the Outsider podcast, with social media. I've been off of social media for about a year, for about most of the year. I've been on Blue Sky. I just couldn't really handle Facebook stuff and all that crap. But I'm going to get back on it. I'm going to try to stay away from a lot of the political stuff from my personal stuff. Now I'm going to create an Outsider page. I'm going to put a lot of my thoughts on there, and y'all can check those out and follow that and whatever else. But I want you to know I'm going to aim more of my time and even some resources into this. Okay, I really feel like I have a lot to offer here, and so I'm really going to try it out. I'm going to really give it an honest go and see where we land. Okay, everything is an experiment, and I'm going to do what I can to post more. I'm really going to try this to really promote this. So I really hope that you consider coming with me on this journey. That you subscribe to the podcast, whether it be on Apple iTunes or on Spotify. That you listen in on the Substack. Really hoping that you can enjoy this just as much as you do with the writing. But I'm going to continue the writing. That's not going to go away. I never thought that I'd ever be good at this. I actually had some people tell me that I'm really good. I mean, because if you talk to the 2001, 2002 Drew Landry, that person had a really tough time writing. Like, it was a real tough go. But the more you do, the better you get. And so, when you take a lot of classes that are writing intensive, you have to improve. There's no other option. Okay. So that's why I'm always thankful for my educators at that time who really pushed me to do better. So I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful for where I am now that has pushed me to improve my writing. To make sure that my ideas are clear and that my thoughts are gathered and that they're out there. That's so helpful. Okay. All right. So just be on the lookout for more presence of the Outsider newsletter, of the Outsider podcast. I'm very excited about that. You got to hear a little bit of what's going to really happen. I've continued the same format. Hopefully, we'll just have more of it. Folks, I thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget that I still have that a plan going on. That deal is lasting up until January the 2nd. 25% off the newsletter for a year subscription. Year subscription, 25% off. That deal lasts until you hear this, until January the 2nd. Just go to the Outsider newsletter on Substack. Click that button that says to upgrade your subscription. It's less than $40 a month, folks. That's about $350. That's anywhere between $350 to $380 a month. That's a deal. That's even better than a deal. That's a legal steal. All right. Y'all have a good rest of your time. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.